James Caan passed away last week. I think a week ago today, July 6th. Yeah, July 6th, and I think it was announced on Thursday. He passed away at the age of 82 in Los Angeles, California. Leaves behind a treasure trove of really good movies. And of course, the first thing I think of when I think of James Caan, I think of his very brief blink and you miss it appearance in the direct-to-video movie Santa's Sleigh, the horror movie. I think of him in that movie. I actually sent that clip around to some people because he's in it along with Fran Drescher. It's the opening scene when this whole family gets killed by Bill Goldberg as Santa Claus. It's James Caan, Chris Kattan, Fran Drescher, and Rebecca Gayheart. And the inner joke of that scene, that opening scene to that movie, all four of those actors are Jewish. That's the inside joke of all of that scene. But who am I kidding? James Caan, obviously best remembered for The Godfather, Sonny Corleone, and Godfather Part 2 pretty briefly as well. But he was in a ton of stuff. This was a guy who worked in Hollywood through multiple generations, multiple decades, from 1961 to really the end, 2022. So he saw the real changes in Hollywood and beyond movies. One really good show, and I don't watch a lot of TV, as you guys know. One really good show. Have you guys ever seen the show Las Vegas?
No.
He was in that. Tom Selleck was in that show.
When did that air?
2003.
I think I actually did, like,
on NBC.
Not like concertedly watching it, but I remember it, my dad watching it. Yeah.
He was the casino manager on that show. That's a great show. That's a show your dad probably watched. Because my dad loves it.
Yeah.
My dad loves it. I've seen a lot of it. That's a great show. And he was a real big reason why that show was so good. Josh Duhamel is the other actor in that. He's like the understudy of the casino that James Caan takes under his wing. But he leaves behind a ton of great movies. Another movie I really like by James Caan too, Rollerball, made by Norman Jewison, who is still alive to this day. Norman Jewison, who directed Fiddler on the Roof, Jesus Christ Superstar, 95 years old. I don't think a lot of people know that he's still alive too. But James Caan was in that one along with John Houseman and a lot of others in Rollerball. I've always liked that one. And then modern, Elf. He was in Elf as well. So, I mean, he leaves behind so many big roles and stuff. And I'll throw it over to Dom because I love the Godfather movies. Dom might love them even more. And I want to throw it over to Dom, too, remembering James Caan here.
Yeah, I might actually even agree with you just because it's become kind of a Father's Day tradition for my dad and I to watch The Godfather. We just, I don't know why, we just love that movie so much. And a lot of that's like a manly man's movie. It's like a rite of passage for some people, at least in the previous generation, to watch, The Godfather, especially if you're Italian, especially if you like crime movies. Honestly, it covers a whole bunch. But if you know James Caan, you mainly know him through three things. First and foremost, of course, Godfather. Second, if you like historical war epics, then you probably know him from A Bridge Too Far, which is just jam-packed. He's like a lesser on the screen time, but he's, because it's so jam-packed with names and faces, but you might know him from there. But three, if you're about our age and you're not into crime or The Godfather, if you don't really know what that is, then you probably know him through Elf and watching him in the Christmas classic. He is the father to oh my God, Will Ferrell. Yes. In that movie,
buddy,
which a lot of people don't even recognize him as, just because he's so old and just playing just a regular guy. But that's mainly, I mean, obviously, again, performing since the 60s, he is a true actor, true artist, and he's just been a working class actor ever since. But it's so amazing just to read his filmography. A lot of it you don't even realize, but it's really cool to see. He personifies the archetype of the hothead in pretty much anything. And for a lot of people, particularly in crime stories, if you watch any of them and if you see any hothead in any of them, you're just probably going to instantly think of Sonny Corleone, specifically James Caan as Sonny Corleone, as opposed to his, I guess, novel counterpart. But yeah, dude, I never watched Thief. Apparently that's okay. Wow. That's a poster, but
it's a cool poster.
It is, at least the one on Wikipedia.
That's a Michael Mann movie. I actually have on my list of things to do this year is watch all Michael Mann movies because Thief is like a big blind spot for me too. Willie Nelson's in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, dude. But James Caan, even though he's only in the first movie, in the second movie, he's actually considered a cameo because he literally only shows up because he's spoilers. He's dead by the second movie, and he literally only shows up in the last like 5 minutes in that last scene. So it is considered a cameo, I believe. But really, he's only in one movie, but his death affects everything else that happens after that, and affects how Michael Corleone behaves and acts. And it's so cool to see to see that his career, James Caan's career, is getting a little more exposure these days, and hopefully more people can recognize that, and including me. I really didn't know much about him at all other than those 3 movies that I talked about. So hopefully he can get some more exposure there, but at least in his memory. But a real working class actor, James Caan, 82 years old. Honestly, it felt like he's been working for so long. It feels like he might even be older, but a real manly man all the way through.
What say you, Joe?
Yeah, for me, I mean, if you want to list some movies that I remember him and made notable impressions on me. One of my favorites that he was in is a Stephen King adaptation, Misery, where he plays the writer that's being held hostage and everything. And I love both of the performances in this movie. I think both are very good. And to me, that's like one of my favorite Stephen King adaptations. Another one, and if you're from Chicago, you're probably familiar with this movie. I think it was a direct, to TV movie or maybe direct to video. But we watched it in middle school in our gym class when we had a rainy day, and I was like, "This is such a damn good movie." Brian's Song, and where he played one of the football players on the Chicago Bears that was diagnosed with cancer. And then finally, one of the ones that, of course, Godfather comes to mind. That's where I first saw probably James Caan. But another one that I just love so much, and it's one of his last few roles he did, but Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. It's Tom Lockwood, Flint Lockwood's dad in the movie, who is very afraid of technology and just reminds me of any older parent that is afraid of any technology. And James Caan just voiced him beautifully. And yeah, the guy, like you guys all said, Elf as well, for me too. He's been across so many generations of Hollywood, and he's played so many different characters. It's just this dude, he is so cool. I read the Playboy interview that he did a long time ago after The Godfather came out, about how all these guys used to think he was some macho big guy that would beat people up. He's like, no, that's some bullshit. I'm laid back. I like to drink wine and all this other stuff. I like to listen to music and go see the opera. He
seemed pretty private and pretty quiet.
Yeah. And he ended up going off on the Playboy interviewer because of all just the random stuff that he was just bringing up that had no basis to it whatsoever.
Just going after him Carlo, just beating him up in the street.
Yeah, with the baseball bat and everything. Yeah, it was sad seeing that happen. This year a lot of mobster actors have passed, just out of nowhere. We had Ray Liotta recently too.
Yeah. God protect Joe Pesci at all costs.
Yeah, or De Niro, for real. You forget how old some of these guys are because of how many times you've seen them in movies. You just think, oh, they're in movies, they're doing fine, and then you look at their age and you're just like, oh shit, all right,
And I think it's an effect, not to cut you off, but I also think it's an effect too with these movies that air on cable all the time, like Godfather and
exactly.
Goodfellas and Casino. Is you feel like these guys are and I know De Niro's of all of them the more ubiquitous one. So De Niro pops up on TV a lot, so you know what he looks like now. But Pesci quit acting a long time ago and stuff, and it wasn't until The Irishman where you're like, oh my God, he got old, because these actors stay eternally youthful on the screen, especially when these movies you could find Goodfellas on TV at any time of the day.
For God's sake, HBO ran Meet the Parents 24/7 from 12 a.m. to 5 a.m.
Yeah. Yeah. The last thing I'll mention with James Caan. No, we'll go into the bad guys. Another great James Caan movie. You might not have seen it, but you probably know of the crappy remake of it, the movie The Gambler from 1974. They remade it about 8 years ago
with Mark Wahlberg. Yeah.
Yes. which I hadn't thought of until just now. But The Gambler's a really good movie with James Caan. He's an English professor who's a gambling addict, and he's in debt to the mob.
Yeah.
And the poster of it, I always love the poster. I had to pull it up again. The poster is a picture of him in like a casino looking like disheveled. And it says, for $10,000, they break your arms. For $20,000, they break your legs. Axel Frito's 44,000. And it's a great movie. Paul Sorvino's in it. Burt Young is in it. Like, that is one I hadn't thought of it until just perusing his filmography. That is a really good gambling movie. And I'm not a big gambler. I love gambling movies. That's a top 5 gambling movie for me, is The Gambler with James Caan.
It's a Paramount Pictures movie. I might have to check if it's on Paramount Plus, because I've never actually seen the original. I've only seen the remake.
Yeah, I saw the original before the remake came out, and I was like, God, this is going to suck. I remember thinking, like, the remake going in, I was like, this is going to suck. This movie was great. God forbid they remake Rounders. That's another underrated one.